Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Welcome to the Reach Wesleyan Church on this beautiful Sunday morning. It's good to have everybody. And if you're joining us online, it's good to have you as well. And please leave a comment down below. We like to see the comments. I'm trying to find my announcements. Let's see, what do we got going on? Hey, it's Summerfest week. That means there's all kinds of things going on. Okay? Some things that pertain to us as a church that I'm going to try to give you in relatively good order. We're going to need some help this week. Let's see, what are we going to need help? Friday is Kids Day. We're going to need some volunteers. Now, don't be scared. Okay? I think I've got the dunk tank covered. Okay? You don't need to necessarily think that because you're volunteering for Kids Day, you're going to go in the dunk tank. If you want to, that's fine. But I think I got some enough teens that we're going to have the dunk tank. And we go over to the field and have the dunk tank, and the kids can have a blast. But I'd like to have some other people there, adults or people that are not going in the dunk tank, to talk with the kids. And we're going to have some brochures for VBS and stuff coming up. And so just some people to kind of man the booth type thing, all right? Don't worry about the dunk tank. If you don't want to get wet, I'm not going to make you get wet, all right? Just want to make sure that's clear. But we're going to have setup is probably about 8 o'clock on Friday to get the dunk tank all ready, and the, what do you call it? Gazebo thingy up, whatever it is. Sunshade. But I don't think Kids Day starts until 10 o'clock. So if you're coming to help pass out things and talk to the kids and stuff, 10 o'clock probably is good. So that's Friday. On Saturday, we have our usual bake sale out in front of the church, but we're adding to it a little bit this year. We're going to have some stuff in here if people want to bring any kind of craft goods that they've made, baked goods. We can still take donations of drinks to sell. Any money that's raised on Saturday is going to go towards the building fund, the roof project. So we're trying to use that to raise a little bit of extra money there this year. The dunk tank will be set up there too, if the weather's nice. I don't know, last year we had like one kid go in it, and that was it. But it was cold last year. They were all complaining, the water's too cold. This year I'm hoping maybe we get a little bit more warmth. But yeah, baked goods, drinks, any kind of soda, water, any of that stuff. You want to donate any of that, or any craft items, you can drop them off anytime during the week. Just put them in here in the back, and we're going to get some things set up this week for that. And that's going to start probably around 8 o'clock as well on Saturday. Because of that, things going on, there's no youth this week. Rachel, are you having young adult? Yes?
Yes.
Wednesday, young adult, 6 o'clock, where are you going to be?
Outside, hopefully.
Outside, hopefully. Okay. So young adults, 6 o'clock on Wednesday. Tonight, if anybody is interested, we're going to do a campfire out back at the parsonage here. And we'll have hot dogs and s'mores, and if you want to bring something to share, go for it. But we'll have a lot of that stuff here, and just come, bring a chair, and sit down and relax. And we're just going to have a good time. We're going to start at 4:30 and just have an evening of, some conversation, and we got some yard games, and just kind of have a nice evening together. So everybody's invited to that. Next week, this is very important. Everybody needs to hear this. If you're online, next week there will not be a live service. Next week is the community church service underneath the big tent. It is at 10 o'clock. Now, I don't know if this is a drawing card or not. You guys don't get a break because I'm preaching next week. So if you like that, join us over there. The Pentecostals are doing music, I think, and I'm preaching, and we're going to have a good service together, and it's usually kind of to me, it's always the culmination of the Summerfest. I know it's not for everybody, but, it'd be nice to have a good showing there, that we all get together under the tent with the other churches and have a great time worshiping together as a has a couple of towns, or whatever you want to call it. So 10 o'clock next week, there will be nothing here. No Sunday school, no service, no live stream next week. We'll all be over there. I think that's all the announcements. Did I miss anything? Anybody else got anything? All right, good. As we come to worship this morning, Psalm 18, verses 35 and 36 is our call to worship. Think about these words. You make your saving help my shield, and your right hand sustains me. Your help has made me great. You provide a broad path for my feet, so that my ankles do not give way. If anybody's ever done any kind of walking over rough terrain or hiking, boy, those ankles are kind of important. And you know when you ever turn an ankle and you go right down, but it says here that the Lord gives us strength to our ankles, right? It's kind of a neat concept. Keeps us strong. We're going to sing this morning, and it's interesting because we just sang, some of us just sang the song yesterday, didn't we, William? We had memorial service for Christine Kozlowski yesterday, and that was one of the songs that Frank wanted us to sing. But why don't you stand with me and we begin our time of worship and song, "The Lily of the Valley." Song says, "Here I am to worship." Isn't that what we've come for? Here I am to worship. Here I am to bow down.
Beauty that made
Lord loves us. It says He loves us while we were still sinners. And Christ came and died for us. And I don't know about you, but I know there's an awful lot of people out there that still need to understand that. And so we need to be praying that God would continue to move in people's hearts and lives. I think we need to be praying for our communities in this week. There's going to be a lot of activities, a lot of things going on, and just pray for safety there. I know there's a lot of other prayer requests as well. You notice there's a few people missing this morning. Some of them were actually here. They skipped out. There's a Crush Cancer Walk going on in Jonesboro today, and so Melanie and Trudy have left. I believe William and his crew are taking off. They just don't want to listen to the sermon, that's all. So there's a bunch of them that have gone up there, and so just kind of pray for them today as they're up there, and that they don't get too overheated, you know. Let's see here. We've been praying for a bunch of different people. I know that Melanie's mother can still use prayer. She had mentioned that. Benny Beal, wow, I can't even remember already. Benny Beal has been in the hospital. Phyllis Merritt went in the hospital this week, and they're still trying to figure out what's going on, really. Just pray for her. She's having quite a lot of tests done. We prayed for Sue Mills. We've been praying for James Alley. James is recovering. He's had his one foot amputated, and he's just going through PT at the hospital, trying to get strong enough so he can come home. So pray for that. What else this morning? Prayer requests, updates, praises.
Hi, Jeremy Chandler
Jeremy Chandler?
broke his leg that had the broken ankle.
Okay.
He was still on crutches from the ankle. And he broke his leg and they cannot fix it
Ouch.
because of the diabetes.
Okay.
They're not planning to. He's going to go for a second opinion, I believe, but the doctors don't want to because it won't heal because
Okay.
of his diabetes.
Did somebody else start to say something?
Remember Milton Burgess family?
Yes, Milton Merchant, he passed away this week. Remember that family. Continue to remember Frank Kozlowski and his family. Sandy?
Yeah, Roy, to be able to stand again. He's going through a lot of back spasms, so he's having a hard time doing his therapy.
Okay, who was that?
Right.
Right.
Roy, I mean. Oh, sorry, we asked. And Stacy, Dana's daughter, did
Okay.
undergo the surgery, and she's, as far as I know, doing well. So.
Okay. Jeffrey Alley's still recovering from the kidney transplant, and he's doing fairly well. He had a couple of little hiccups this week, but they got through it, and the doctors say that he's doing well, so that's good. Anything else this morning?
Yeah, there it is. Ida's trying to get Eleanor into a nursing home, and it looks like Narragansett might have, I know they have openings, so they've got to finish up the paperwork, but just pray that Eleanor will be receptive to this.
Okay.
Thankful for safe travels for Elton's girlfriend, Pauline, her sister, coming home from Ohio. Our friend Susan could still use prayer. And safe travels for Regina and Wayne and Stephanie as they're on the road today and tomorrow to bring her back from Pennsylvania.
Okay. Traveling around.
Yeah.
First Junior is not doing well either.
Horace?
No.
Okay.
His nephew, Elliot, he had double hernia.
Yes.
And he's doing fine.
Good. Okay.
Well, Pastor,
Oh.
Pastor, and my daughter Kendra has COVID,
Okay.
and she's a nurse, but she's had shots and boosters. And anyway, you can still get it, I guess.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Seems to be going around a little bit at
Yeah.
times. Yeah,
Thankfully, less than it was.
that's right.
Yes. Our prayer chorus says, only believe. Pretty simple, but pretty hard sometimes, isn't it? Only believe. We're going to give these all over to God. Let's sing that together. Father, it is so good to come and to leave these burdens with you. We know that there are a lot of things we can praise you for. You've watched over those that have gone through surgery and you're healing them, but we know they still need your care, your touch is a great physician. We pray for James and for Jeffrey. We think of Elliot. Father, we just pray you continue to touch and heal them. We know that there are many others that are physically really feeling the effects of some sickness or illness or disease. And we want to keep lifting them up. We think of Horace, we think of Susie. Father, we think of Melanie's mother this morning, that you would continue to touch her. We pray that you would be with Joel this morning and touch his body. We pray, Father, for Jeremy and this injury he's had, that you could help him to heal. We know it's a challenge there. We think of Phyllis and many tests she's going through. We think of Stacy and Ray. And pray that you give them what they need this morning. Father, there are so many that are on our list. But we know that doesn't daunt you. It's not too much for you. You are a great, powerful God. We also know that there are families that have lost loved ones that we want to continue to lift up and ask you to put your arms of comfort around them. We think especially this morning of Frank and his family, and Milton and his family. Father, as these are just the latest ones that we've had to say goodbye, we pray that they would have encouragement today. They would have comfort. We think of the travels that are going on and Summerfest that is happening and the many people that will be on the road. We think of Regina and her crew as they'll be coming up from Pennsylvania, and we think of just the many different events that will be going on this week. We just pray for safety across our community, even across our nation. We know that there are many problems out there. We pray for our leaders this morning. We pray for our president and our elected officials. We pray for those that are spread across our country and trying to lead through some difficult times. We ask that you give them wisdom and guidance. Pray for our military men and women that as they serve to protect and defend, that you would give them strength for their job and safety that they come home to their families. While we think about the many mission fields that are out there, some right in our own backyard, some across the sea. And we think of the ones you've called to go to many different places, and we just ask that you would continue to build a passion to spread the gospel in lives. Continue to call. I pray that you be with our missionaries this morning, that you would strengthen them and keep them healthy, that they would go out and not just preach the gospel, but see where you're moving and be ready to meet you there, and to be the hands and feet that you need in a situation. Pray that you would work in hearts and lives, and that even our conversations day by day would share a little bit of your love with people around us. As we open your word this morning, as we search it and learn from it, we just pray that you open our hearts and our minds to hear you and what you would say to us. It's in your name we pray. Bye, guys. I feel like I'm losing everybody this morning. All right, I know we've been kind of, working on this parable for a while, and I had to chuckle this week because there's only 4 parts to this parable. And we did 2 weeks, then we had Father's Day, and we got away from it. And now we're doing this week. And next week we got a break because we have a community service. And we will finish this parable, I promise. I really do. But it's interesting. Sometimes I think that allows us to really think deeply about things too. Let us sit, let us really think about it. But today we're looking at the 3rd part of the parable. The parable of the seeds, or the parable of the sower, or some call it the parable of the soil. We're in Matthew chapter 13. If you have a Bible and want to turn there, the words will be up on the screen here too. But I want to go back to my video games for a minute. I got to start with that, I really do. I mean, I named the whole thing after video games, leveling up and stuff. This is about growing. It's about growth, our spiritual growth, our personal growth. And sometimes in our life, we have those weeds. We don't necessarily call them weeds, but they are things that hinder our growth. That's what we're talking about today. In video games, in computers in general, computer programming, and for those of you who don't know it, before God really made it clear that I was supposed to go into ministry, I really wanted to go into computer programming. Okay, so I started in 10th grade taking college courses. And I enjoyed it. It's fun to sit there and put in code and to see things happen because you type all this in and it makes this whole command list, and then you do something and something else happens at the end and you're going, wow, I did that. That's cool. Okay? But in computer programming and video games in particular, one of the things we don't like to see are called bugs. Right? Okay, now viruses are, in a sense, a type of bug, but it's created to cause problems. The bugs we're talking about are something that pop up just because you're typing in code, and this code over here doesn't always mesh exactly right with this code over here, and so something happens that's not what was expected. In a video game, that could be anything from maybe a quest doesn't work right, doesn't advance properly. You're going along, you're doing your stuff, you do all that, and you hit that critical point where I finished that task, and nothing happens. Someone's supposed to pop up, or the next part of the quest is supposed to open up, or something's supposed to be unlocked, and it doesn't happen because there's a bug. Sometimes it can be something random happens, right? I don't know how many times I've been in video games, you're going along through the world, and you see something floating in the sky that's not supposed to be floating in the sky. Right? Because it's a video game. It's all code and pixels and all this stuff. And maybe there's a tree that's, got this 6-foot gap between the ground and the roots. It's like, wow, that doesn't look right, does it? Because it's a bug. And things like that happen randomly throughout games. Sometimes it works in our favor. And I've seen games where you go in and if you do something just right, you get permissions you're not supposed to have. or you get in places you're not supposed to go. Aaron likes to find those kind of things. He'll go into a new game and go, okay, where can I break it? That's what you're doing. I know it is. Where can I break it? I just want to make the developers go nuts. He's like, he's not supposed to be there. How do you get there? We have to fix those bugs. Because, well, some of them can be fun and funny. They're not the way it's supposed to work. So you have to fix them. You know what the problem with fixing a bug is? Sometimes you fix one bug and you end up with 3 bugs. Because if you don't completely understand where the conflict is coming, sometimes you can make matters worse. Sometimes you can fix a bug and it just goes away. And so you've got to know what you're doing a little bit. You've got to sometimes have just some trial and error. But a lot of times bugs seem to multiply. You know, there's a comparison there to weeds. Weeds seem to multiply, don't they? And we're going to look at that parable again today. And we're going to talk about this third soil, this third problem that we have towards our with our growth. Not bugs, but weeds. So since it's been a couple weeks, we're going to go back. Matthew 13, we're reading verses 1 through 10 and 18 to 23. That same day, Jesus went out of the house and sat by the lake. I think he was just trying to get away and have some quiet time. I really do. Okay? That's not the focus of this, but I think that's what he's doing. But it says, such large crowds gathered around him that he got into a boat and he sat in it, while all the people stood on the shore. Then he told them many things in parables, saying, a farmer went out to sow his seed. As he was scattering the seed, some of it fell along the path, and the birds came and ate it up. Some fell in rocky places, where it did not have much soil. It sprang up quickly because the soil was shallow, but when the sun came out, the plants were scorched and they withered, because they had no root. Other seed fell among thorns, which grew up and choked the plants. Still other seed fell on good soil where it produced a crop, 160 or 30 times what was sown. Whoever has ears, let them hear. The disciples came to him and asked, why do you speak to the people in parables? Listen, Jesus said to them, what the parable of the sower means. When anyone hears the message about the kingdom and does not understand it, the evil one comes and snatches away what was sown in their heart. This is the seed sown along the path. The seed falling on rocky ground refers to someone who hears the word and at once receives it with joy. But since they have no root, they last only a short time. When trouble or persecution comes because of the word, they quickly fall away. The seed falling among the thorns refers to someone who hears the word, but worries of this life and the deceitfulness of wealth choke the word, making it unfruitful. But the seed falling on good soil refers to someone who hears the word and understands it. This is the one who produces a crop yielding 160 or 30 times what was sown. Are you noticing the progression here? We're going from the people that hear the gospel and don't understand it, so they don't do anything with it, to the people that receive it, but they don't grow. They don't put down roots. They don't have any better understanding. They just have the very basics, and so they kind of fall away. And now we get into the ones that they receive it, they start to grow, but the world presses in on them. Anybody feel like the world presses in on you? We're all there sometimes, right? I believe, this is just kind of a disclaimer, I believe that in many ways, these people are still God-fearing Christians. But what does it say? It says they were unfruitful. That's just sad. That's just sad that we would go through this life and not produce any fruit. Oh, I believe in God. Okay. God wants us to do something. God wants us to produce fruit. And that fruit is fruit of the Spirit. It's the attitudes and the actions of our life reflecting His. But that fruit is also disciples making disciples. It is evangelizing and telling other people. It is helping other people grow. It is a unity in the body of Christ. It's that fruit as well. So there's the fruit within us, but there's the fruit that we share corporately as well. But what is the problem? The problem is thorns and weeds. Thorns and weeds. Let's start by defining a weed. What is a weed? What is a weed? Usually in gardening and farming, the term weed refers to a wild plant growing where it is not wanted and competing with cultivated plants. Okay? That's a working definition. In other words, in my garden, I didn't put that there. Right? I don't want that there. That is not my tomato plant. That is not my cucumber plant. And it needs to go because it's a weed. Right? That's what it's talking about. I'm trying to grow something that I can eat and enjoy, and it looks good. I don't know. Whatever you grow for. You know, like your flowers. Okay? Most of us don't eat flowers. Deer like them, but we don't. But you got weeds in your flower beds too, right? Why? I don't like that grass there because it takes away from my pretty flowers, right? So a weed is basically a plant that comes into somewhere we don't want it. And it competes, that's an important thing, it competes with the cultivated plants. When we plant corn, we want corn to grow. Anything else, therefore, by definition, is a weed. It becomes a competitor for nutrients and water in the soil. What happens if we take away nutrients and water from our cultivated plant and give it to a weed? Our cultivated plant doesn't grow as well, does it? That's the problem with weeds and thorns. At least one of the problems. Weeds seem to grow faster and easier, don't they? If I wanted to grow a weed garden, I'd have no problem. Just let it go. Yeah, there it is. What do you think of my weed garden, right? Up all over the place. They're growing like weeds. It's easy. But if we want to grow a nice cultivated garden with some rich, juicy vegetables and whatever else, we've got to work at it, don't we? Keep the weeds away. Jesus says that some of the seeds fell among the thorns, which choked out the plants. It's not to say they didn't grow. You get that? It's not to say they didn't grow, but they were unfruitful. In other words, they weren't producing like they should. There was too much competition. If you have too much competition, you end up with stunted growth and poor fruit. But they were growing a little bit, just not as much as they should. Do you realize that the weeds in our garden are a result of sin? Have you ever made that connection? It's not just a spiritual metaphor. The physical weeds in your garden are because of Adam. We can blame Adam and Eve for something else now. Might as well. But no, if you look in Genesis chapter 3, you read this. It says, to Adam, he said, because you listened to your wife, don't think too much of that. Because you listened to your wife and ate the fruit from the tree. He's basically just saying, because you didn't listen to me, you listened to somebody else. And ate the fruit of the tree, which I commanded you not to. Cursed is the ground because of you. Through painful toil you will eat food from it all the days of your life. It will produce thorns and thistles for you, and you will eat the plants of the field. By the sweat of your brow you will eat your food until you return to the ground, since from it you were taken. For dust you are, and to dust you will return. That was God's curse on Adam. You remember the serpent had his own curse. Eve had her own curse. This is Adam's curse. And just as a side note, Adam's curse is the longest one. Okay? So, take that what you will. But here, the man has been appointed to provide, and God's saying it's going to be harder to provide. The man is issued the command of taking care of the plants and growing food, and yet you are cursed, and it's going to be trouble for you. Can you imagine what gardening would be like if we didn't have thorns and weeds? It would be a lot more joyful in some ways, wouldn't it? It's still, I don't know, I like gardening. It's a relaxing pastime. But you know, you do get a little frustrated with, like, I just pulled 3 weeds out of there, now there's 4. Right? They multiply. I keep pulling every day, go out there, there, take them out. But there's something satisfying about growing a plant and eating the fruit of it, right? It's just that we have to work harder because of the curse of sin. Weeds are a tangible reminder that sin affects us every day of our life. And the spiritual weeds in our life choke out the spiritual growth, just like physical weeds choke out the physical growth of a plant. Some of those are sin. Some of those weeds and thorns are sin in our life. Some of those are worries. We over-worry about the things of the world, things that are happening or going to happen or could possibly happen. How many times the things we worry about never happen, right? That's why it chokes us. Worry is the opposite of trust in God. Worry focuses on us and what we try to control, whereas trust and faith focuses on God, that He's got everything. He's going to take care of it. And then there's also the deceitfulness of wealth. We think too much of the stuff around us, and we forget about the stuff of eternal value, the people that we can take to heaven with us. Do you know what the most plentiful weed in most of our yards and gardens is? At least we label it a weed. It's probably the dandelion. Right? That little yellow flower. It seems to pop up everywhere, and the roots go at least 6 or 7 feet down. I mean, come on, you ever try to pull one of those things?
Yes.
I mean, when they get any bigger than your little finger, they're almost impossible to get out. I mean, you've got to dig down, a shovel length in order to get there. Do you know what's interesting about the dandelion? Is the dandelion is one of the most edible plants we have. Literally every part of the dandelion you can eat. I don't recommend eating the fluffy seeds. They kind of stick in your mouth. But you can eat every part of the plant. Root, leaf, stalk, flower. They make tea, they make salads, all kinds of things. And it's supposed to be a really good plant for you. But yet, how many of us look at the dandelion as a good plant or even a good flower? We don't, do we? We overlook the dandelion for the roses and the tulips and the, because it's whatever. It's just that tiny little fluffy ball. Side note, I'm getting distracted here, but side note, I saw the coolest thing. A guy took clear resin and he slowly put a dandelion puff into the resin so it stayed fully intact for a time. That was the coolest thing. I made paperwork out of it. That's the coolest thing. It's completely preserved in that resin. So there is some beauty there. There is some practicality there. You can live off the dandelions if you wanted to. But when they get in our garden, what do? Yank it out. You know, there may be some things in your life that are good, but maybe they're not in the right place. You may need to do some reordering. There may be some things in your life that are good, but they're not allowing you to grow the better things. There may be some things in your life that are okay, they're not sin, but maybe they're not actually practical or growth worthy or helping your spiritual life either. So sometimes we need to look at that. Any worries, any sin, any covetousness, they are distractions that need to be plucked out by the roots so that you can grow. What are weeds? They're things that don't grow. So what do we do with weeds? We pull them, right? We pull them out. I mean, there's other ways you can deal with it. I don't recommend you put, weed killer in your garden if you're trying to grow plants, because it doesn't differentiate between the good plants and the bad plants, does it? But that is a way to take care of weeds in some places. Maybe cracks in the pavement or something, you pour weed killer in there, I guess. But usually the most efficient, best way to get rid of a weed is just to reach down there and rip that thing right out of the ground, right? Not always. I know that. Everybody just went, what? Not always. There's some danger there. You just need to know it. Do you know the longer that a weed is allowed to grow, what happens? The bigger the root system gets. What happens if that root system has spread out through your entire garden? I have container gardens, so fairly small gardens, right? One to, a couple plants in each one. But what happens when they spread out and you go to pull that weed, you might pull the whole garden out with it. That wouldn't be good, would it? You get some of those plants and the roots get tangled in amongst each other. Why? Because they're competing for the same nutrients and the same water. And you go rip one plant out, you're going to get both of them. And that doesn't make you do any good, does it? Jesus told another parable almost right after this in Matthew 13. He talked about a wheat field. A farmer went out and he took seed, good seed, that he knew was good wheat, and he sowed it in this field, and everything looked great. Things started popping up. They started growing, and what happened? They noticed that it wasn't just wheat. And the worker said, why, that was good seed you had. Why do we have all these weeds? And it said that an enemy sowed some weeds. Why would an enemy do that? I don't know. I better not find anybody throwing weed seeds in my garden. Because that just won't go over well. You'll get enough weeds by itself, let alone somebody helping it. So the workers, in their enthusiasm said, well, we're going to go out and pull all those weeds. And the farmer said, no, don't do that. Why? Because when you're pulling the weeds, you're going to pull some of the good plants as well. Instead, he says, let them grow. And when it gets to the harvest time, then we'll sort it out. So I'm guessing, even though Jesus didn't say this, I'm guessing that harvest in that field probably wasn't as big of a harvest as it could have been. But at least it wasn't as small as it could have been. Sometimes you just need to let things grow and mediate that. But if you can ever get rid of the weed, you get rid of the weed. And at the very end, all those weeds were pulled and thrown into the fire. Weeds are fine when they're little. You can pop those little suckers out, they got hardly any root, and you just go, ding, don't worry about it. But like I said, like dandelions, I swear they go down at least 3 foot. They go down deep, don't they? You got that big old taproot. The longer you let it go, the harder it's going to be to pull that weed out. And there's a lot of truth in that in our spiritual life. There's a great spiritual lesson here. It's much easier to stop sin in the beginning let it grow. It's a lot easier to stop sin in its conceptual stage than it is after you've actually done something. And there's a lot less damage. When you're tempted, let's see here. In James 1, it says, when you are tempted, no one should say, God is tempting me. For God cannot be tempted by evil, nor does he tempt anyone. But each person is tempted when they are dragged down by their own evil desires and enticed. Then after desire has conceived, it gives birth to sin, and sin, when it is full grown, gives birth to death. See, there's progression there in the weeds, isn't there? Temptation. Temptation starts with a thought. Temptation starts with a desire. Temptation starts with something that's usually in our head. That's when we need to root out the weeds. That's when we need to say, oh, no more of that. Nope, I need to get rid of that thought. I need to not dwell on that. I need to go and do something else. Because what happens when that desire grows? It leads to a temptation. It leads to an action. It leads to a sin. And that sin leads to death. Sin starts with a desire or a thought. Worries start with a thought, right? Well, what if this happens? Well, what if this doesn't happen? Well, what if, what if is a bad place to start, isn't it? And boy, that can be so difficult to stop and say, no what ifs today. Not doing it. There is no what ifs. It's just, let's do what is right there in front of me. But that's when we need to stop it. Because then what if turns into this whole byplay in our minds of the world is ending, right? It's the whole Chicken Little thing. Right? Chicken Little got bonked in the head and the sky was falling. Because what if it really was? That's not to say that we turn our heads and put our head in the sand or whatever you want to say and ignore it. Because there are some things that we need to concentrate on, but we don't need to worry about. We need to focus on it and maybe get something done, but we don't need to worry about it. Don't do the what ifs. Temptations start small. Oh, that would be fun. Oh, that could be interesting. That could be pleasurable. And they grow from there, don't they? And then we start with fantasies, and we start with pouring money into, or we start with doing something, or cultivating a bad relationship, or any number of things. Instead, we need to stop and pray that God will give us the strength to walk away. To walk away and put our energy into the good things that are around us. There's an awful lot of people that spend an awful lot of time and energy and thought into being bad. I mean, think about it. Some of your thieves and stuff out there, they spend so much time planning. They can be brilliant at some things, but they're using it for the wrong reasons. Right? We put so much time and energy sometimes into sin. We could be putting that into good use, where we're growing for God, where we're being fruitful, where we're building our families and our church and our community, rather than causing problems in our lives. Just like gardening, rooting out the weeds in our head and our life has to be a regular habit, a daily habit. We got to get out there and pull those weeds every day, because I'm sorry, they come back. I don't think I know anybody on this planet that can say, oh, I'm completely free of temptation. Because they come back. Thoughts come back. We get invaded by the world presses in and gives us suggestions. And they latch hold, and they take root. And we've got to get them out day by day. That's why our Bible reading, that's why our devotions, our quiet time with God, that's why our prayer life is so important, because that's our gardening, our spiritual gardening. We're working the soil, we're getting rid of the weeds, we're fertilizing the plants. That's where we grow. And next week we're going to, or not next week, 2 weeks we're going to get, there we go, doing it. 2 weeks we're going to go and we're going to talk about that fruitful life. And we're going to talk about what God expects out of us, because that's the hope of Jesus' parable here. Here's 3 ways not to do it. Here's the way it needs to be done. And he ends with that 160 and 30 times what was sown. The bountiful harvest. I've been watching the new Star Wars series. That won't surprise anybody. Kenobi. It's about Obi-Wan Kenobi. If anybody knows Star Wars at all, you know that at some point, the Order 66, the Jedi were all but eliminated. We're in that period of time when there's a few hangers-on, right? They've spread out over the galaxy, they're trying to hide, but they're being hunted down by Darth Vader and by his Inquisitors. And this show starts 10 years since that hunt began. So Obi-Wan has been hiding for 10 years on the desert planet of Tatooine. And they haven't found him yet, which by itself is remarkable. But how he did it makes sense. He stripped away everything in his life that was Jedi. The lightsabers, the using the Force, all that, he completely basically turned his back on. Because he knew that if he used that, if he did anything, they were going to hear about it, they were going to find him, and they were going to kill him too. So he's living a normal life. Normal. Right? He's got a 9-to-5 job, if you want to call it that. He goes to work, he keeps his nose clean, he goes home, boom, everything's fine. It truly is a fascinating series. I think it's one of the best ones yet, but that's my opinion. But there is a spiritual lesson in there. Okay? He is surviving, but he's not thriving. We can survive. And we can survive with these weeds in our life. We can survive and keep our nose clean and not have any conflict, not have any, problems come our way, not to get persecuted. But we also are not going to thrive. There's a line in that show. It says that one of the Inquisitors says the Jedi hunt themselves. In other words, the Jedi do things that just stand out. And so they're easily tracked. They hunt themselves. And that stuck with me because aren't we as Christians supposed to be like that? Aren't we supposed to stand out? Yes, that makes us a target. I understand that. But it also changes our world. The Jedi were for peace and prosperity and helping people. And they wanted to help people. That was a desire. And it seems like Christians should want to help people, right? It seems like we should stand out from the world. Because what's the world? The world is selfish. The world is sinful. The world is twisted. The world is deceitful. We don't want those things. God's called us to a bigger, fuller, richer, more bountiful life. But we've got to embrace it. And that means pulling weeds. And that means doing the things that are good. Following God and His commands. This world has a lot of sin, a lot of worry, a lot of distractions in it. And we can still be a Christian in the world and not bear fruit. that is probably the saddest Christian life out there. Or we can get busy and we can weed the garden, and we can get back on track, and we can get close to God, and we can grow and experience a bountiful harvest. And I don't know about you, but that's kind of the path I'd rather be on. I would rather be going towards a bountiful harvest than just get to the end of my life and say, yeah, well, I made it this far. What do you have to show for it? We're going to close. I've been told I've been going too long lately, so I'm trying to get done. We're going to close, but I want you to think about that. What are the weeds in your life? What are the things that are keeping you from growing like you should? You know, I've got a garden growing right now, and I've got to go look through it because I haven't been too busy this week with it. Things are growing well. I love that new growth because sometimes it seems like you go out every day and you can see where it's growing. But I also know that there's a couple plants in there that aren't supposed to be in there. I need to get them out. We need to take some time and reflect in our own lives. What is God saying to you? What are the weeds that you need to pull in? Why don't you stand with me? Maybe God is pointing to something in your life right now and says, this is a weed. See it? You know, we have to identify it first. And then we take steps to pull it. Maybe it's accountability with somebody. Or maybe it's shutting off something. Maybe, who knows? It could be any number of things. But I can tell you this, you will be blessed to get rid of it. That's where God will work. That's where God will grow you. It opens up space for something new to grow. Father God, this world has got a lot of distractions and a lot of sin and a lot of worries that they can all press in on us and they can take root in our minds and our lives. But Father, we want to live above that. We want to get rid of those weeds and we want to trust you fully. We want to look to you for the growth that we need. And we want to bear fruit. Abundant. Father, show us the weeds that we need to get rid of. Point them out to us. Help us to have the strength to pull it and to not let it come back. Help us to be vigilant day by day. That as we meet with you, that you would remind us of where we need to be growing and what we need to be avoiding. And Father, that we could come back in a month, a year, 10 years, and say, wow, I wish I'd done that sooner. Just look at the fruit that God is producing in my life, in my church, in my family. But we just pray that you continue to guide us in the days ahead. Thank you for all that you do to grow us. In your precious name. Amen.
Good, how are you, baby?
Yeah, it's still on.